Okay, we're live. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to our next episode of Masters of Product Live. In our studio today, we actually have Wook Chung, and Wook has over 20 years of experience in various product management roles, spanning anywhere from ad tech and fintech and platform to consumer and zero to one optimization. When you think about a true blood product manager who's seen everything, you need to talk to Wook. He's currently the SVP of product at PayPal and has held leadership positions at Vera Bank, SoFi, Meta, Samsung, Google, and Twitter. Um, when I met Wook, actually, it was maybe about 6 months ago. We were actually at a CPO roundtable, and Wook and I got into this great debate about how AI is going to impact product management. And it was a fantastic debate. I think we almost did a disservice to the other members because we kind of took over the conversation. Um, but it was a great call. And there was few things that actually came out to me when I was actually talking to Wook. Right, number one is if you wanna have the thing that stood out for me for work was number 1 is just a passion for product management, right? I mean, we're product managers, we all are passionate about building great products, but I think work takes it to the next level, which is always good. I always like to meet a fellow nerd. No offense, work. Um and he's great. He's great at creating new products. I think he has some great ideas about how AI is going to change the way PMs work, which is, by the way, the topic of our conversation today. Um, and the other thing that I noticed when I was talking to Wook, and is that his passion comes out, and hopefully it'll come out in our interview today. His energy for product management, and as well as building a vision, all of those three things are kind of stood out to me when I talked to him the first time. So I'm really excited to have him here the second time. As for me, I'm your host, Mustafa Kapadia. I am the founder of Echo Point, where we help product managers or product organizations adopt AI so they can be more efficient and effective. Wook, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mustafa. It's so good to be here. And I am so excited to talk about this topic today.
I can't wait to repeat or replay our conversation. It's going to be great. Why don't, if it's okay with you, well, let's just jump in because we only have 45 minutes. And I'm going to tell you right now, 45 minutes is not going to be enough because each
Mhm.
one of the things we're going to talk about is an hour in its own. And by the way, we actually have a few people already attending the live stream. So Nuri Kim said, go work. So Nuri, thanks for joining us. Um, let's begin with the big question, right? So just big picture wise, work, um, where do you see AI and PMs working? Like, do you really think AIs are going to replace product managers?
Mm. I think this is the probably the $1 trillion question.
Yeah,
And not because the overarching economy of product management salaries is $1 trillion. Maybe it is, but because PMs are really, in my belief, at the heart of change. And so I want to quickly take a slight step back by trying to define product management
yes,
in a common language
yeah,
because the job has very many different
yeah,
meanings and definitions.
completely.
In my
And different
opinion,
industries have different definitions. And
yeah.
so, yes.
So in my opinion,
Excuse me.
product managers are effectively the job descriptor of a product manager is to make value happen, make things happen and hopefully making the right things happen with the right amount of resources and changing the world for the better. So if you kind of think about the definition of value as something valuable for humanity, and yes, you can have value for humanity that
Right.
potentially harms the world, but ideally, you're creating value for humanity in a scaled out way. PMs are, in my opinion, you have to create more value, right? You need to make things happen. And now
Yeah.
a lot of modern product management has started from, software engineering and so forth, so that we can have a proliferation of what we call products today. But product management has always existed. It has
Yeah.
always been there from mankind, starting with a tool
Yeah.
and then figuring out how to make more tools, right? All the way to today's tool set of, let's say, AI that can, even give you the illusion of artificial general intelligence so far.
Yes. Yeah.
So, given the fact that product managers are always trying to create new value, then the question comes down to, is new value driven from pattern recognition,
Mm.
or is new value driven from something that has to be thought differently in a drastically different way? And if you had asked AI, let's say Gen AI and GPT and all that was available in 2006, and if Steve Jobs had asked, how do you make this phone better? And we're talking about a feature phone back then.
Right.
Will AI have proposed, forget all the buttons, get a big screen
Right.
in front of you and make it into a computer? In a similar way, if you had asked prior to Uber, can you please make taxis better? AI might have actually said, make bigger doors or
Yes.
have cash dispensers on every
Yes.
seat in a taxi. Because convenience and better from the imagination of a taxi back then is effectively the pattern that the AI will match.
Correct.
So now, if you really say, okay, a product manager has this feeling for, oh my God, it could be so much better. And when we say so much better, it is not a simple word.
No.
It is a multi-dimensional expression of what the world could be.
Yes.
And so it really then comes down to, can AI set a vision for where we need to be, where humanity could be? And does it have the influence and the execution and the willpower to make that vision happen?
Mm.
And based on what I just spoke in the last 3 minutes, I think we would kind of say that it's very difficult to see AI playing all of those roles.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, we'll definitely talk more in later in this talk about how AI tooling can help, different areas of product management. But let me quickly pause there for a second. Like, does that make sense?
It does, and I mean, you and I are on the same page on this one, right? So if you're looking for brand new breakthrough ideas of problems or solutions that have never been thought about to problems, AI is not the right thing for you because it is like you said, it's a pattern recognition machine that's going to look at what's happened in the past to come up with it. So for it to come up with a screen-faced iPhone or the Uber example is perfect, right? Um, because that's not what AI does. And I think if PMs rely on AI, then that's not the right use of AI. But if you can getting to more of the, you know what, I think I know what I want to do, and now I can have you make AI make me more efficient, make me more effective, then yes, I can do that, right? So it's level of how you use a tool, if anything, right? And I actually, in many ways, you kind of answer the question is that when we think about PMs as basically problem solvers for users, right, on a certain and delivering a certain value, there are things that AI can do, and there's a lot of things that AI cannot do, right? And as finding that optimal ground makes perfect sense,
Mm.
right? Um, with that being said, I like the overview about because I think we're almost getting into the next question is to so if AI cannot do breakthrough thinking, which is what I agree with, what in your mind can AI do? And how do you
Mm.
optimize the human AI relationship?
Mm.
Or at least in this case, the PM AI relationship?
You know, at least I think there's a certain kind of trend emerging where a lot of us are very impressed by the reasoning abilities and the seemingly real intelligence that Gen AI tends to exude with confidence.
Right.
But at this point, we all know that a lot of that, I mean, all of it is pattern matching. And just because a certain sequence of words or pixels have been mentioned before or is available for training, that does not mean that that actual, production is based out of critical thinking. It may be the same
Right.
exact sentence, but it doesn't mean that AI genuinely had a critical thinking behind this. And
Yes.
critical thinking in this case is based on your entire memory of what you have lived through, what you have observed, what you have heard, audio, video, even your dreams, and how your neurons fire in a particular sequence that is unpredictable. So, knowing that, I think it's very important to understand what AI is amazing at and amazing for, and how do you effectively start to play critical roles
Yes.
in the relationship. So, for example, uh, I had to recently research 4 or 5 competitors, and I had to essentially study their earnings reports for the last 4 quarters.
Yeah.
Now, in any single instance, this would be a entire day's worth of
Yeah.
research to synthesize, right? But as you can imagine, AI can do this in a mere minutes.
Yep. Yep.
And you get to a 80, 90% result very, very quickly. I mean,
Yes.
that is precisely what AI is amazing at, which is it can do things in parallel. It doesn't have to be single threaded. It can parse information and data super fast, and it can suggest summaries and general trends amazingly efficient.
Yeah. I agree.
But
And I think your statement that it can get you 80 to 90% there is really key because again, AI will never get you the right answer or the 100%, coming back to your earlier point, because you still need that critical thinking to take a look at even at the research that you did to say,
Mhm.
does this make sense? Right? I can't just take it for word or for value as just as it is. I need to think about all the experiences I've had to say, yes, it makes sense. No, I need to go deeper here or not there. Right. And I think that's an important part. And the second part that you also mentioned is, there are things that AI cannot do, but the things like the more mundane activities like
Mhm.
research, right? Or helping write requirements, or do even analyzing a data set of user feedback to identify what's going on. All of those things AI can do, right?
Yeah.
In which you can use it. And then the question then becomes is in your day, and maybe I'll ask you this question is how much time do you spend thinking about breakthrough ideas versus doing the more, I don't want to use the word mundane, but more of the rote PM work.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, during your career, as you have different scopes and span of influences, your job tends to change. But let
Yes.
me position myself as the core source of, let's say, a senior PM, right, in the
Yeah.
industry, who's been in the industry for 4, 5, 6 years, and they're the heart of the execution. If you really look at that type of a PM role, most likely, I would say about 60, 70% of your time is essentially that mundane PM work per se.
Yeah.
Whether it's a status update email, whether it's a PRD adjustment, whether it's writing Jira tickets potentially, and then the other probably, a significant portion of the 60, 70% also is about alignment,
Yeah.
meeting folks, informing
A lot of
folks.
it is
Yeah.
stakeholder management. I agree. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, yeah, absolutely. You can also think about a case where you have a digital version of yourself that attends these meetings and manages stakeholders. Yes, we can think about that. And I'm not saying that that's not the possibility here, but from a efficiency perspective, like if you look at a regular product manager's, world, like nobody probably gets to zero inbox. I'm sure some product managers who are very sort of like clean and well maintained might do, but like I would love to, for example, have AI take care of my inbox.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure there's maybe the 15, 20 emails that I must respond to today.
Yeah.
Some things can wait. No matter how much you bring in that intelligence into Gmail or whatnot, it's just not enough because it doesn't
No.
represent who you are and
No.
what situation you're in,
Yeah.
right? So again, I see AI progressing to be able to handle inboxes better, manage your calendar better, status updates, all these sort of mundane, I mean, they're important, by the way, mundane tasks to get your thing
Yes.
going. But also, Mustafa, there's one thing that I wanted to mention when you said research is mundane, statuses updates are mundane. There's actually some things that you learn from doing these mundane things yourself. So it's not just grunt work,
Right.
right? Because if you think about it, if you're writing a weekly status update every single week and you feel like there's no progress in this one sub team because it's the same status or no update, the natural instinctual PM instinct would be why? What's
Right.
missing? Why isn't there progress? Versus if you early on in your career just get used to sending out status updates based on AI,
Yeah.
then you may not get that learning and that sort of that instinctual development to say, should I start questioning this or not?
Yeah.
And
But I
so,
think
as much
that
as
comes
yeah,
back. Sorry, there's a couple comments, but I'll come back to that. I think that so I like the status support one because I think that's a really good one because I absolutely agree that there's value in reviewing the status report and being able to figure out what's happening and what's not happening, right? Um, if you're the type of PM who just runs the AI, creates a status report, doesn't read it, and sends it out, 100% agree that I think is a
mhm,
disservice to you and your organization and your team, right? But coming back to your earlier point is you can actually have the AI write it, but then you actually have to review it with a critical eye and figure out what's happening. I think that is where most people are missing, right? And I kind of like the 80-20 that you talked about. And by the way, Lavanya just joined and she said 80-20 too. I hope you're thinking about 80-20 from breakthrough to, sorry, 20 breakthrough, 80% more of the PM work. And by the way, please feel free to ask questions or have comments. This is supposed to be a live conversation, so don't feel shy. Um, but it also kind of helps the other question that we start off is that in many ways, this is 100% way to know that AI will never replace PMs because that
mhm.
20%, which I think is what you're talking about, in which it is critical to build those critical thinking skills, is key. You can actually have, quote unquote, we do this all the time, right? You can actually have an intern type a status report for you, but you still have to review it. You
Mm.
still have to take a look at it. You still have to give the intern input into it, um, and then review it, and then eventually send it out. And so, all you're doing is replacing the intern with AI, but you're not replacing anything else. The directions, the input, the review, the finalization. Um, I mean,
Mustafa,
stop there.
let me make this conversation a little spicy.
Yes,
And I know that you and I fundamentally agree in the principles, but I want to make it a little spicy, right?
yes, I love it
What if
because this
what
is
if
what
I
this is what
say
people are waiting for.
what if I say that if you don't do the 80, you cannot do the 20?
If you don't do the 80, you cannot do the 20. Fair enough. Please continue. Tell me more.
So what that means is that if
I
I
think
kind
I
of
know where you're
reflect
going,
on
but I love, yeah,
how
please.
yeah, yeah. So imagine if I remember, when I was a junior PM and I'm doing all more of this mundane stuff, let's so-called today's mundane stuff, right?
Yeah,
Writing meeting notes, really running scrums and all that. And because I've done that so many times, I today can look back to say, well, if I had to do it today, I am so confident that AI can do it.
yeah,
But if I was doing it for the very first few years of my life and I hadn't seen all the variations of what it means as an effective scrum or effective velocity measure or effective anything, as a matter of fact, how do you know what's good from the bad?
yeah,
And how do you know that the cog is actually turning? And so to me, it's kind of quite easy to actually say, you know what, this has to be the vision.
yeah,
Right? And now I'm not saying even that is easy, but let's
yeah,
hypothetically say that if you close your eyes to say, hey,
yeah,
Mustafa, what should the world be in 5, 10 years? I'm sure you'll have something amazing, incredible to speak.
yeah,
The difficult thing is, what is the realistic next move that we should make to get towards that vision? So this is where I think the product management role is super difficult. It's because not only do you have to have the vision that is exciting and makes your heart beat faster, but is strategically the
yes,
strategic approach towards achieving that vision is not something that I would say that I could have given you the same degree of the strategic approach today had I not done the 80 groundwork
yes,
throughout my career.
yeah. So can I do you mind if I expand that conversation a little bit, right? And actually this is getting into our next conversation too, is like how does because different your different levels of years of experience will change the way you use AI, right? And I think the one you talked about is if you're just starting off in a career, how do you know what good looks like, right? Um, and I think so. From your point of view, I get it that you're a junior PM. You have asked AI to write the status report. You now are reviewing it because you never wanted to give up the review process. But let's just say it's not good. But if
Mhm.
you're a junior PM, you just don't know what good looks like, right? Look, when you are a junior PM, how do you know what good and what not good look like? Forget about who does the writing.
Sure. You only know it because you failed.
Exactly. And how do you know that you failed? Because you actually sent it to somebody and they told you this sucks. And then you actually have the conversation. Because
When yeah.
ultimately, you are producing these documents or whatever it is for consumption by somebody else, right?
So you may have succeeded in the status report, but when I said failed, I wasn't necessarily referring to the status report. I was saying you failed as a PM.
Ah, okay. So you're thinking about if I didn't write it, I may not be able to make all those connections for that 20% breakthrough. Is
Yeah.
that the point? Okay.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So let's hypothetically say that you are, I mean, you can pretty much apply any product to this. Let's hypothetically say that you are still reviewing it and you see this one department continuously failing.
Yeah.
So you say, okay, what is it? Let me look into it. It turns out that the tech lead had gone on a parental leave, and therefore everything is slowing down. Okay, so then naturally your next instinct is to say, okay, because that is happening, let me go ask my engineering director or VP if they can temporarily borrow somebody who can, lead the team for a while. You know what? You'll start to come up with a different
Yeah.
way to sort of respond to it. But I think that amazing product management already prevented that. So if you were a world-class product manager, you would have already said, okay, hey, you're going to go on parental leave.
Yeah.
Do we have all the right directional architecture ready so that the team can be up and running? So you're preventing what's about to happen. But now you can say AI may have told you to do that, but ultimately you engaging with that person to get that weekly status would have extracted that information ahead of time. So
Yeah.
given information is always available perfectly, yes, I agree. AI probably will make the same decisions that you might want to engage with it
Right.
earlier. But how did you make the tech lead tell you that they're about to go on parental leave 2 months or 3 months ahead of time if you're not engaging with this person every single day?
Right.
This is where I really think that I don't know how the world might be 20 years from now where we all have our digital neurons connected to some type of a cloud and we get to do these
Well,
interactions without words, but
we are in many ways. I'm going to take the conversation a lot beyond the PM, right? In many ways, we are in a world in which we are redefining what it means to be a human. Like we're taking just like how internet actually took a look at the supply chain and said, okay, there's things in the supply chain that don't work and things that don't work, and I'm going to disaggregate that and figure out what the value is. In many ways, AI is forcing that from the human perspective as well, right? And there's lots of articles that I write about the human psychology, or I read about human psychology and the impact of AI. It's really forcing us to answer the question: what does it mean to be a human? We
Mhm,
always thought that writing was a key element of being a human person, right?
mhm.
Because it's something that computers cannot do. And now we're going into this piece in which it says, wait a minute, if a computer can write, does that mean that does that mean that it's human, or does that mean that I'm less human? And I think a lot of the fears that we have about AI taking over is one of those things. I'm actually going to go to the next question because this next
Sure.
question is going to go into the thread, but there's a bunch of comments as well. So from Nuri, thanks for sharing. AI is not fully replacing PMs. It could influence the work in many ways. What would be the one or two focus areas to prioritize to be successful in the AI era? So, look, I'm going to let you go first, please.
Thank you, Neri. This is also a not easy question to answer. Obviously, I mean, I encourage every PM or non-PM out there to understand the capabilities, what AI can do for you to reduce time. If you find yourself trying to map a particular CSV file and generate an Excel graph out of it and whatnot, please give that to,
Yeah,
AI, right? But if you see yourself depending on what AI is telling you and just blindly following it, now you're entering a very dangerous zone.
yeah,
And so you really have to stop yourself, right? It is very convenient to just copy and paste that graph and put it on a PowerPoint, but you really kind of have to get curious. For example, I mean, this is a real example from yesterday, as a matter of fact. I charted a trend graph and AI naturally picked weekly granularity. Now, my prompt did not have a particular say to give me daily or hourly or weekly.
yeah,
But weekly, as we all know, masks some of the abnormalities that happen intra-week. So my instinct immediately told me, no, no, something's not right. It can't, we didn't have a normal week. So then I changed the prompt to give me daily granularity, and now you see it.
yeah,
But the problem is, how do you know that weekly data was questionable or not? And this is where we have to really, really be careful because if you're not curious, if you're not diving into the why, or how, or the next level of detail, and this is what I fear for junior PMs to rely a lot on AI tools only, because weekly graph may as well have been very good for a particular view or particular perspective. But in this particular example, without seeing the dailies, you would have said we had a great week, which we didn't, by the way.
yeah. And thank you for that, Wook. Nuri, I'm going to answer it a little bit differently than Wook. I actually think that there's a lot that you can do with AI. The more important question is, and this is, and so listen, when I go to my clients, we go through an entire product development life cycle. And there's areas in which AI can help, all the way from helping you brainstorm requirements, brainstorm features, writing requirements, user stories, you name it, doing the analysis. But it comes back to two things that Wook said, which is very important. Number one is, how are you asking that question, right? Most PMs, when I look at it, are what I call, they ask simple questions, like, analyze these feedback, and or do a quick sentiment analysis, right? When you ask generic questions, you end up getting generic answers, just like what Book
Mm,
talks about. But when you ask specific questions, you get AI to be more specific. So that's number one. Number two is, even if you ask specific questions, AI is, like what Book said, is going to get you only up to 80% of the way. That 20% still requires a PM or a human to evaluate it and look at it. And that evaluation does come with any type of experience that we talked about, right? But you have to build it one way or the other, right? We are actually in a world in which, we either like it or not, there's going to be, our job is going to get disaggregated in many different ways in which AI can do things that we cannot, in or at least at the speed that we would like to do it, right? So there's a whole, that's part of it. But I really want to think about, I usually, when I go to my clients, I push them to the limits as to what AI can do with the guardrails
mhm,
that we talked about. In fact, one of the biggest fears that I have, in fact, I just published this. I should have sent this to you, Book, is one of the biggest fears I have, and something that you're sharing with me also, is that, is AI going to help us lose our creativity,
mm,
right? And if you do, which is like blindly follow I guarantee you're going to lose creativity. Because at a certain point in time, you won't know what good versus bad looks like. And so there's things that we need to put in as guardrails that organizations can do and PMs can do themselves, um, that will actually help them use AI for the thing that it's good for. And then for the other part in which it makes us really human, is going to be, is where AI can do. And so, for example, you if you ask the AI to write a user story, AI is going to write a user story, but that may not be the right user story. What you can do is tell AI, give me 20 user stories of a particular problem that I had, of a certain product with a certain user with a defined target market. Now AI is going to give you 20. You're not going to pick all 20. You're going to probably pick two or three, probably change them around a little bit. and then move forward. And that to me is a much better use of AI, right?
Mm.
Um, we have two more questions, so if you don't mind, I'm going to go through it. We have Lavanya, and Lavanya is asking, Wook, in your definition, what do you mean by business as usual? What does BAU stand for? In like when you think about what task AI is good at, how would you define that? Lavanya, I hope I'm doing justice to your question.
Is this just an acronym question? I think the
I think she's
question was
asking more
answered.
about, is business as usual just like minutes, status reports, meetings, or is there something more that
Yeah, I
AI
mean,
can?
business as usual would be every daily activity that's required to keep the engine moving,
Yeah,
right? Now, if the engine is moving without a vision, that's a separate concern, right? You could still do BAU, but it doesn't mean that you're going anywhere.
yeah,
So, assuming that all the vision, the strategy, and the metrics are locked in, I consider BAU as the rituals and the activities that we do to keep the team going.
got it.
That could be meetings or stand-ups or sending out weekly statuses or whatever that might be. Yeah.
Let me skip around if it's okay. I know we had a set of questions, but I think we're going in a great direction. If you let's talk about, I know we talked about the difference between a junior PM and a much more seasoned PM using AI, because I think they use AI very differently.
Mhm.
Because each one can benefit from it in a different way. But let's just talk larger about the roles itself, right? Um, in your opinion, um, we as PMs are usually right now think about a front end PM, a back end PM. We do API PM, we do UX UI with designers. There's all of these roles that have proliferated. A lot of roles are out there, right? And that's because we've been forced to specialize based on the
Mm.
product and the company that we're working at. What do you think it happens to those different types of roles? I'm curious. Do you think that we continue and get more specialized? Do you think that the roles collapse? Where do you think we're heading?
I actually think that AI will further bifurcate the specialization because each different type of PM needs to do more of the 20, or it gets to do more of the 20,
Yeah.
which means that literally leverages their natural talent, their instincts, and what they were gifted for.
Mm,
So, in terms of problem solving and creating new value, all PMs are equal, right? That's the foundational definition.
yeah.
But there's
That's
value
why
to be
people hire us.
created. But there's value to be created as a SaaS product or a UX facing product, or and they do require different skills, right? Some PMs have a very good UX sense. They look at a
Yeah.
screen to say that looks great, that's intuitive, versus some might say that, hey, I can't tell the difference between a green or a yellow.
Right.
And yes, AI will help you compensate for some of the areas that you miss, but that means the average specialization of a given PM gets an average booster. So everybody is decently good at decent levels of every other area,
Right.
which means as a PM to now contribute value, you're doing more of the 20, which is you're amazing at UX sense. You're the
Yes.
one who is able to say, okay, this is how a map should be integrated into a taxi ordering app,
Yes.
right? And out of the 20 variations that AI might have proposed to you,
Yeah.
you say that it has to be this two, one of this
Yeah.
two. Why? And you're not doing any user research. You just instinctively know this. And that is where you need to lean more on. And you will then see yourself doing more of that, I think.
Yeah.
So therefore, yeah,
Yeah. I completely agree. I think AI lets you be more you, because a lot of
yeah,
the times
yeah,
we
absolutely.
are
Yeah.
good at certain things, but we can't spend enough time on those things because we have to do everything else, right? But if you're really good at design, if you're really good at, at coming up with vision, if you're really good with collaboration, if you're really good with stakeholder management, whatever your skill or your superpower is, AI allows you to do more of the superpower in
Hmm.
many ways, so you can be more successful and you can actually drive more value. And I like
Hmm.
that. I like that piece because I absolutely agree that AI frees up a lot of time. But then, what do you do with that time? Well, you're going to do the things that you enjoy doing, in which you are uniquely positioned to do,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And it allows you to be more you, and I like that. I'm gonna go back to the question because there's a few things Charlene just asked is like, um, going back to junior PM versus a senior PM, how does AI change, right? Do you see the need of AI increasing, decreasing as your experience grows or as your role changes?
I think I would refer back to what Mustafa said about 5 minutes ago. The way that we use our tool would be very different. For example, as a very much junior PM, you might even say, "Hey, what is a standard PRD style for a SaaS
Yeah.
company that has 55 stakeholders to manage, right?
Yeah.
Versus like, hey, what is a PRD style for 0 to 1 pager proposal that I'm going
Yes.
to pitch to my senior leadership, right? So you might get insights there. On the senior side, uh, as you know, as PMs grow up in their careers, there is way more strategic thinking and vision and direction that you have to
Yeah.
of influence. And so therefore, as you go higher and higher up the ladder, you might be more curious about industry trends, more about corporate data, corporate strategy, key metrics, and the interaction between different
Yeah.
KPIs that seemingly govern the business. So being able to monitor all of those or quickly summarize all of those might be your need.
Yeah.
Either way, I think that AI is obviously going to change the way PMs operate at any given level, and no matter what type of a PM you are.
Yeah. And I'm going to add to that, Charlene, is that as you get higher up in your career, you can use AI more like a thinking partner. So, for example, coming
Mm,
back to Wook's point, if you actually have to give a presentation to the board, Wook, I picked that because we were talking about that before the interview or before our call. You might actually feed the deck to the AI and say, what type of questions do you think the CMO is going to ask?
mm,
Or what kind of questions do the CFO is going to ask me? Because as a senior leader, you want to be able to, we are still PMs, and so we still have a bias about thinking it a certain way. And so you can actually use AI to expand your vision to say, okay, you know what? I know that I can talk to this from a product perspective, but if CFO is asking me the question, he or she's going to come from a very different point of view. And so I need to be able to respond from that perspective. And so you can have AI come up and say, based on this, these are the questions that you might get asked. And so you're now better prepared for that piece. Or coming back to Wook's example, it's like if you're doing more of the vision development, you can have you AI come back to you and say, you know what, here's the vision that I have. I'm just going to talk into it. Can you just help me synthesize it so it's much easier? Can you come up with that one line tweet that I can put in front of everybody so they'll get it? Or can I be able to, how do I talk to this vision to this customer versus this customer, given the dynamics are different, right? So a lot of it is it allows a senior PM, coming back to your point earlier, to be more senior,
mm,
right? How many times have we taken senior PMs into board meetings and they've been, or in meetings with key stakeholders, and because they have not been able to prepare for that different type of questions being peppered at them, they get flummoxed, right?
mm.
And so that preparation is key. Um, this is great. By the way, we have some Nuri loves the idea about boosting your superpower. I like that. Let me see if there was a question there. I'm just going to show that. Thanks for hosting the session. We appreciate it. We actually, believe it or not, I told you, look, we're going to run out of time, and we're just getting started, right? Um, I'm going to ask one more question. Hopefully, we can answer in the next 6 minutes, and then
Mhm,
Wookie and I need to just book more time,
mhm,
right? Um, we kind of talked about the roles that even though you have different roles that allows PMs to do more and more, just like what Nuri talked about, is focusing on the superpower, right? If you expand that point of view and say, let me go across the entire software delivery lifecycle,
mhm,
right? All the way from product to designers to engineers to testers and developers and so on, and all the way down to infrastructure for that matter, because all of that is a critical part of your value chain. How do you think AI changes that as
mm.
we get closer and closer, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a very complex question, Mustafa. And, I don't
That's why I
necessarily
saved
want
it
to
for the last.
That's why I don't want to necessarily speak for my engineering counterparts, design counterparts, and so forth. I do have an opinion, so I'll share it. This is my 2 cents, right? So
Yes.
please, if you're working in other functions, don't put me on, don't come after me. Uh, at the end of the day, whether it's the PM or engineers or designers, we all have to imagine a world with our creation that is a different world. And we have to get alignment on that vision. And when that vision is accepted, I expect every team member, whether it's an engineer, again, a designer, to really think about what is their contribution for
Right.
us journeying into that vision. Now, let's hypothetically say engineers might say, you know what, Wook, this is a great vision, but actually the patterns of this software is very normal, meaning that we need a map, we need an app, and it has to do this. Versus it could be, Wook, to achieve this vision, we need a material that's 5 times stronger than carbon fiber. So
Mm,
no such thing exists today. What else can we do? So everybody brings in their own specialty into journeying into the vision. And obviously, if you're developing new material and you don't have a material scientist on your team, then you're failing. No AI is going to solve that
yes.
for you, right? Therefore, it starts by saying, do I have the right different disciplines around the table, that can help me journey to the vision? And then I really lean on my individual sort of leaders, I guess, on their departments to say, okay, what does AI in this case mean for me?
Yeah.
If if we're coming up with, let's say, 100 different variations of a Salvador Dali style painting, AI is perfect for that. You know what, design team, you go for that, right? Versus we really don't know how to communicate to a human on this critical information that
Yes.
probably evolves. Like you have to really do some critical thinking,
Yeah.
explorations and so on and so forth. And now, again, different AI will do different things for you. So back to the SDLC point, I do think that software development lifecycle will be short.
Yep.
And even the coordination of all of our inputs coming in may be orchestrated better with AI. So
Yes.
SDLC has to become shorter for sure. But when I say shorter, I don't have a good sense of how much of the acceleration comes from certain departments, nor certain parts of the orchestration.
Yeah. I think that's good, and I agree with you. I think we are looking at a way to collapse SDLC
Mhm.
much faster, and I think each role is going to morph into different ways in which they can use AI to be more efficient. But it comes back to your earlier point: is that you know if you think about just in silos, right? Okay, PMs are more efficient, designers are more efficient, engineers are more efficient. I actually don't think that that's actually going to shrink the SDLC. Um,
Mm, mm,
Because I think the efficiency or the shrinking it has to come is when we actually get to the point at which we're not thinking about a silo perspective, right?
mm,
Because most of the wait time, if you think about back to my Six Sigma days, most of the waste or the wait time comes in when work is waiting to move between silos,
mm.
right? And so when AI starts thinking about how can I actually move this work forward, um, in a way that's more efficient, I think that's when we're actually going to see much more shrinkage of the way we do our process, right?
So then,
Um,
you mean a lot of the savings will happen via orchestration efficiencies
yes, I think there's
in the
savings to be
SDLC?
had within the silos itself, but
I
again, it's
agree.
going to be
Yeah, yeah.
locked in the silo,
Yeah,
right?
I fully agree with you. Yep.
Right? But I think if you think about across silos, that's where the orchestration piece comes in. That's always been the hardest part is to work with teams that are across from you, right? Because there's a lot of communication that has to happen. There's a lot of stakeholder management has to happen. There's a lot of back and forth. I mean, listen, in large IT departments, they actually have release managers. Their entire job is
Yes.
to make sure that
Yeah.
the train is on time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And they do the job of orchestration,
It's
right?
almost like doing a continuous stand-up because AI
Yeah.
is continuously orchestrating.
Yes. And so
I
I
love
think
it.
that
Yeah, yeah.
we're just tapping the surface. I think agents play agents have a role in it. In fact, I was just talking to another friend of mine. She runs AI for a anyway, I can't mention the name. um, and she was talking about how she's trying to solve that orchestration problem, right? She is trying to figure out that yes, there's a lot of quote unquote project management work that needs to happen. Um, but in many ways, there's a lot of things that AI can take us off our plate that would make it much easier to do that. Um, with that being said, I know we are actually over time. I'm gonna I don't do you have 2 more minutes? I do have one last question, and this is gonna be an
Yeah,
easy
sure.
one, or do you have to run? Um, just one way. How do you use AI today? I'm just curious.
I absolutely use AI for not having to browse tons and tons of different earnings calls,
Yeah,
reports. I do AI for aggregating metrics across various different divisions and departments. I use AI for actually sometimes double checking my email. Just to, sometimes, sometimes you're frustrated. You just type your thoughts, but you know that that is not the email that needs to go out. So you
no, yeah,
euphemize it a little bit, soften it. Uh, AI is becoming more and more of a daily tool, and we're getting more habitually using it. And
yeah,
I think that's the key thing, right? No longer am I thinking, should I use AI for that? It's just happening naturally. And
yeah,
that's, I think, the key difference. Yeah.
yeah. And I think that's gonna happen more and more as we just make it part of our daily habit. And I think that's a good thing too. So with that being said, I'm going to say goodbye. We actually had a lot of great comments. I think we have a very informative session. Thank you very much. Um, Wook, thank you again for your time. I knew we are going to run out of time. We actually didn't even get to the other half of the questions. uh, but we should do this again if that's okay. If that's up to you.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Mustafa.
All right.
Have a great
Thank you
weekend,
guys, and
everybody.
thank you for our audience who joined. Charlene, Lavanya, Nuri, I believe. Um, thank you for your comments, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks, guys. Bye for now.